Hey everybody, Jay Super Awesome here. I'd like to welcome you all to week 25 of the TheHORRORman's SlashBack Saturday Challenge. This week's slasher movie theme is The Slashers, and I will be giving my review for The Tripper. Okay, so getting into the plot for this one. Sex, drugs, and rockin' Ronnie. As a rural Northern California town prepares for Frank Baker's, played by Paul Reubens, American Free Love Festival, a serial killer roams the woods inflicting preemptive strikes on the hippies who've come for the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Sporting a Ronald Reagan's mask and leaving trademark jelly beans at his gruesome crime scenes, the killer seems unstoppable. That is, unless he meets an unimpressionable flower child. Okay, so getting into my thoughts for this one. With this week's SlashBack Challenge theme of The Slashers, we were simply challenged to watch and review a slasher film that featured the word "the" at the beginning of the title, so I have chose to review The Tripper because it had been a long time since I had seen it. The first thing that I wanted to say about The Tripper is I had an absolute blast watching this political slasher. It was directed by David Arquette, and I remember back in the day when this movie was originally released, when I found out it was directed by David Arquette, I was completely blown away because I thought he did a really good job, and I always thought he had a lot of potential in becoming a really good horror movie director, slasher movies especially, because The Tripper is a very creative and fun and entertaining slasher film. Unfortunately, this is the only horror film he has directed, and I feel like that's a real shame because I have always felt like he had a lot of potential, and The Tripper is one of my favorite things that he's been a part of. I thought the movie had a fantastic opening. The movie starts off in 1967. We have a young boy who is sitting in front of the TV. He's watching the news, and he's seeing a lot of violence and hearing about a lot of political stuff that's going on in the world. And I'm pretty sure that he was too young to really fully understand and come to terms with what was happening in the world at that time. We find out that the boy's mother is in the bed sick with his father by her side. When the phone rings, the father has to quickly leave the house with his son because he has to go to work and has business to take care of. Upon arriving at the job site, we find out that the father is actually a logger, and his men are unable to work because hippie protesters are protesting the trees being cut down. And let's just say this opening sequence ends in a bloody mess. Then the movie will progress to present time, where we have a group of friends who are hippies or stoners, however you prefer to call it. They are on their way to the Free Love Festival, and most of these characters are pretty much stoned out of their mind for most of the movie. They are on their way to the Free Love Festival, and they begin getting picked off one by one, along with other festival goers. So pretty much anyone who comes remotely close to where this Free Love Festival is being held could potentially be a victim to the Ronald Reagan mask-wearing killer. I thought The Tripper had a perfect slasher movie setup. It takes the basic slasher movie formula and uses a political angle to make it fun and entertaining. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the cast of characters we have in The Tripper. So I'm not really going to get too deep into the characters in this movie because I feel like everybody has a pretty good idea of what to expect when going into this one. I had already mentioned the main group of characters are basically doing drugs and getting stoned, getting drunk, and having sex. So I'm just going to talk about a few standout characters for me. This movie has a lot of familiar faces that horror movie fans are going to recognize, or just movie fans in general. We have Paul Reubens' character, who is the one that's putting on the Free Love Festival. He will stop at nothing for the show to go on. It becomes more difficult for him to continue the show when his guests begin to disappear and then later on turn up dead. And that brings us to Thomas Jane's character, who's definitely a standout for me in this movie. He plays the local sheriff who is trying to keep everyone safe. Next up, we have Jason Mewes' character, who obviously plays a really good stoner in this movie. A lot of people are going to recognize him from Jay and Silent Bob, but he has been in other horror-related movies and TV shows. And I thought he delivered another really good performance in The Tripper. The last character that I wanted to mention is played by Jaime King. Now, I have always felt like she was an underrated scream queen, and she delivers another really good performance in The Tripper. Now, her character in this movie is not necessarily one of my favorites that she has played, but she does a really good job at portraying another relatable and likable character. And as far as acting, I thought we had some high-quality dialogue and acting for a slasher movie. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the most important part of a slasher movie, that is the killer and the kills. And I have to say that I absolutely loved the Ronald Reagan mask-wearing killer in this movie, and I really enjoyed his funny political-themed one-liners that he would say before he would murder his victims. Something else that I really liked that the killer did was he actually would leave a calling card on each one of his victims. He would actually leave jelly beans, but not only just jelly beans, one specific color. Something else that was really interesting about the jelly bean calling card was a character in the movie had a theory behind it, and it went something like this. So, someone who reaches in and grabs a handful of jelly beans and gets a lot of random colors, they don't really care what they're getting. But someone who reaches in and gets a specific color has an agenda. So, I thought that was pretty deep. And as far as the kills go in this movie, it has a pretty high body count, and we get a pretty decent amount of kills. The killer often likes to trap his victims, but his weapon of choice is his two-sided chopping axe. We also do have a few stabbed victims. We have a really awesome beheading, and someone gets disemboweled, so the kills are pretty gruesome, violent, and gory, just the way I like them. Unfortunately, we do have a few off-screen kills as well, which is pretty standard for most slasher films. Overall, I don't really have much negative to say about The Tripper. I really enjoyed it. Towards the middle of the movie, there was a little bit of a pacing issue, but I enjoyed the characters just enough that it wasn't really a big issue for me overall. So I'm going to give The Tripper a 8 out of 10. Please like, subscribe, comment below. Let me know if you have seen The Tripper, or just let me know what you think about my review, and I would like to thank you all for watching.